March 7th on the Path of the Hunt is a versatile and free-to-play DPS that can be run with either a standard crit build or a break DPS build. In this video, I'm gonna show you what light cones to use, what traces to prioritize, what relics and ornaments to use, as well as what teams to use and how to use her in a showcase. Let's get to it. So when it comes to her light cones, you want to keep in mind what build you're going to want to run with March. If either you want to run a standard crit build or a break DPS build, in which case if you're going to choose to run a crit build, in the night, which is Seos' signature light cone, is going to be the best for her since it increases her crit rate by 18%, and for every 10 speed that exceeds 100, the user is going to deal 6% more basic attack and skill damage, as well as increasing her ultimate crit damage up to 12% for a maximum of 6 stacks. Dr. Ratios' signature light cone is also pretty good for March because not only does it give crit damage and damage buffs in general, but it also lets her follow-up attack ignore defense, which is a pretty big buff to her damage. And then if you don't have those pretty expensive light cones, Swordplay, which is a 4-star light cone, is also a really good light cone for March, but keep in mind that to meet the requirements of this light cone, March and her Shifu are going to have to target the same target so that March can receive those buffs. This is because whenever you designate somebody as the Shifu, whenever the Shifu uses a basic attack, March is going to trigger a follow-up attack, meaning that if your Shifu targets another target and March does a follow-up attack to that target while she's been targeting another target the entire time, then the requirements for the light cone will not be met and you're not going to get the buffs. And then another good free-to-play alternative for March would be Cruising in the Stellar Sea, which is a 5-star light cone that you can get from the simulated universe. But keep in mind that you can only get this light cone, especially at Super Imposition 5, if you've been playing for a while and have a lot of simulated universe currency to spare. This light cone can give March a maximum of 32% crit rate and 40% attack if you can meet those requirements. And then if you're going to run March with a break DPS build, then Sailing Towards the Second Life, which is Budhos' signature light cone, is gonna be her best in slot because it's one of the only hunt light cones that can actually provide March with break effect. And then another good alternative for a break DPS March would be Adversarial, which increases her speed by 10%. But keep in mind that the previous light cones that you could use for crit rate March could be a lot more practical for her if you're gonna run a somewhat hybrid build with her. But if you want to focus exclusively on her break DPS, then Adversarial would be a pretty good alternative. But keep in mind, a lot of the other light cones that you can run with a crit build March are probably going to increase her overall damage a lot more than if you were to run this light cone or this light cone, River Flows in the Spring, which again increases her speed as well as increasing her damage by 12%. And then for your relics and ornaments, if you're going to run March with a crit build, a 4-piece Musketeer would probably be her best in slot because it increases her attack and her speed, as well as the damage dealt by her basic attack, which is where her main DPS is going to come from. And then another good alternative that is as good as the Musketeer would be the Wastelander, if you can keep the requirements for the buffs up constantly. And then running a 2-piece between the Wastelander and the Musketeer is not as viable, but it's also good enough. But keep in mind that if you can't meet the requirements consistently for this relic, the value of this relic set drops by a good margin. So if you can do a 2-piece Wastelander and a 2-piece Musketeer, that would be a better alternative to a 4-piece Musketeer than a 4-piece Wastelander. And then for a crit March, for her ornaments, you're going to want Rudolent Arena, since it increases her crit rate and her basic attack damage, which again is where her main DPS is going to come from. Izumo Gensei, if you have another hunt character on your team, it's also going to be a really good alternative for her since it gives her pretty good buffs of 12% attack and 12% crit rate. And then if you're going to run March with a break DPS build. For your relics, you're going to want the Iron Cavalry because it increases her break effect by 16%. And then once you have her break effect to either 150% or 250%, you're going to ignore the defense of the enemy by either 10% or 15% respectively, which is going to be a massive buff to her damage, because that's really all you can buff if you're going to run a break DPS. Ignoring defense is crucial if you're going to run a break DPS, so this relic is definitely her best in slot. But if you can't get the Iron Cavalry, the Thief set, which increases her break effect by 32% and is able to give her 3 energy if she inflicts weakness break, is also a really good alternative, as well as a 2-piece for the Iron Cavalry and a 2-piece for the Thief set. Or you can also run the 2-piece for the Iron Cavalry mixed with a 2-piece for the Messenger set. And then for a break DPS March, her best planner ornaments are going to be Talia, Kingdom of Banditry, since it increases her break effect by 16%. And if you're able to reach 145 speed, which March should be able to do fairly easily, you're gonna have to speed tune a bit, but if you are able to reach that easy requirements, you're gonna get an extra 20% break effect. And then the second best in slot planner ornament for a break DPS March is gonna be Forge of the Kalpagni Lantern, since it increases her speed by 6% and it increases her break effect by 40% if she's attacking an enemy that has fire weakness, which is very conditional unless you're running Firefly on your team, which can make the set fairly viable for her. But if you don't have Firefly on your team, this set can definitely become a hindrance to her, since most of the time it's probably not going to be proc. Quick tip for this set, or at least for a break DPS March, for her planner ornaments, if you're going to run this set, having a Firefly and a Gallagher can actually be massive for you. It could probably be even better than the Talia set because it's giving you 4% more break effect and 6% more speed, because whenever you designate your Shifu, as you can see there, Filigree says that if your Shifu, let's say, is a fire-based character, March can actually shred through the fire weakness, meaning that if you have a Firefly March 7th with Gallagher team, you're going to easily be able to meet the requirements of the Forge planner set while being able to shred through fire weaknesses and more quickly be able to trigger that super break damage. And then for a crit March, for her main stats, you're gonna want either crit rate or crit damage on her body, speed or attack percentage on her feet, attack percentage on her planner sphere, and then imaginary damage bonus on her planner sphere, and then attack percentage on her link rope. But if you're going to run a break DPS March, you're still gonna want crit rate or crit damage on your body, speed or attack percentage on your feet, and then you're gonna want attack percentage on your planner sphere and break effect on your link rope. For your substats, if you're running a crit March, you're gonna want crit damage, crit rate, attack percentage, and speed. Priority goes in that order. And then if you're gonna run a break DPS March, try to get as much break effect as possible to trigger the Iron Cavalry requirements and just do more damage overall. And then try to get a bit of speed if you're going to run the Talia planner ornaments, so that you can reach that requirements for that break effect. And then for her traces, it doesn't matter what build you're gonna run, try prioritizing leveling up her basic attack. After that comes her skill or her talents, and then after that comes her ultimate. For her bonus abilities, you're gonna want to try prioritizing getting Swan Sword, which advances her by 25% when the battle starts. Tide Tamer, which after using her enhanced basic attack gives the Shifu crit damage, 60% crit damage, and 36% break effect for 2 turns, which is massive. And then after that, you want to get Filigree, which, like I said, whoever the designated, which, like I said, is going to let March reduce the same type of toughness as the designated Shifu. And then when it comes to her teams, if you're gonna run a break DPS March, like I said, I would recommend running Firefly and Gallagher so that you can take advantage of that planner sphere, unless you have Ruan Mei, in which case I'd say try to get the Talia planner sphere, because Ruan Mei is a game changer for like a lot of units. But if you don't have Ruan Mei and you want to take advantage of that planner sphere bonus and you have Firefly and Gallagher, I definitely recommend this team with the Harmony Trailblazer as well. And then if you're running a crit build March, having Topaz and Dr. Ratio as your designated Shifu so that you can hit the enemy more often, as well as having Aventurine in there as well, since you're going to be having a lot of follow-up follow-up attack characters in there. Again, like I said, Topaz, Dr. Ratio, Robin even. But if you don't have those follow-up characters so that you can insert March into that follow-up meta, running March with any standard Nihility support or Harmony support would do you good, like a Pella or maybe even a Bronya, so that you can do more attacks with your Shifu, or a Yukong, so that if you're running the Wastelander set, you can trigger those requirements more often since they're both imaginary. A Ting Yun as well for that energy regen, attack buffs, damage buffs, or a Silver Wolf for as a Pella replacement would also be nice. But the general consensus is that if you want to run break DPS March, this team right here with Firefly, the Harmony Trailblazer, and Gallagher would also be a decent recommendation. But obviously try to get Ruan Mei in there instead of a Firefly, and try to get that Talia Planner set. And then if you're gonna run a crit rate March, inserting her into a follow-up attack team would be the best option. But if you don't have those follow-up attack characters, building a standard team around her as you would with any other DPS would also work, aka Pella, Yukong, Ting Yun, Bronya, Silverwolf, all of those characters. So in this team, I'm gonna be running a break DPS March build with a break DPS team. I brought in Firefly again so that I can meet the requirements of the Forge Planner set, so that I can consistently hit enemies with fire weaknesses, so that I can get that 40% break effect. But before I start the showcase, I first want to go over what March actually does and where her main DPS comes from and what to do in a team and builds like this. So March is actually going to do most of her DPS from her enhanced basic attack, which deals 3 initial hits, and then after that it has a 60% chance to do another hit up to 3 times. And then her ultimate deals decent damage, but really what it does is it makes your enhanced basic attack deal 5 more initial hits, as well as increasing that 60% chance to an 80% chance to deal another hit up to 3 more times again. And then after you use her enhanced basic attack, whoever you designated as your Shifu will have 60% crit damage and 36% break effect, which in this team, in this break effect team, that crit damage isn't really going to matter, so that break effect is really what is going to come in handy, unless it's the reverse. Unless I designated, let's say, a Dr. Ratio as my Shifu, that 60% crit damage is going to be nasty. And then the way you can designate a character as your Shifu is with their skill, which is going to increase the Shifu's speed by 6.4%. And then whenever the Shifu does a basic attack, if they're on the path of erudition, destruction, or the hunts, that attack is going to deal additional damage equal to 11% of March's attack. And then if that character is of the path of the harmony, nihility, preservation, or abundance, that attack is going to increase the toughness reduction by 100%. And then if you're running a break DPS March and you're trying to meet the requirements of that Talia Planner set of that 145 speed, if the Shifu is on the field, which he's going to, it's going to increase March's speed by 10%, meaning that it's going to make it easier for you to meet that requirement to unlock that 20% extra break effect. And then once the Shifu does a basic attack, it's going to trigger a follow-up attack from March, which matters because for her talent, whenever she does a basic attack, it's going to trigger a follow-up attack from March, which matters because for her talent, whenever she reaches 7 stacks of her talent, which can be gained by either March hitting the enemy or the Shifu hitting the enemy, that's what's going to enhance her basic attack so that she can actually deal. And then another quick little thing about this is that even though her max stacks, and then another quick little thing about this is that even though she needs 7 stacks for her basic attack to be enhanced, the stacks actually cap off at 10, meaning that you can have 3 stacks as like reserves. And then when she reaches 7 stacks, she also does 60% more damage. So in this team, what you're gonna want to do first, you want to designate somebody as your Shifu. Preferably, you're gonna want to go with Gallagher, since Gallagher can do that basic attack into ultimate into basic attack combo, which will let you trigger 5 of March 7's stacks. So like right here, because Gallagher is designated as the Shifu, March is gonna have 10% more speed. Whenever he does a basic attack, March is gonna get 1 stack, and then she's gonna do a follow-up attack, and then she's gonna get another stack, and then Gallagher can use his ultimate to get another stack. This will also advance him forward, which will let him get another stack as well. Right there, she gets another stack. Then basic attack, he gets another stack, and then follow-up attack because of Gallagher's basic attack, because he was designated as the Shifu, she does a follow-up attack, she gets another stack, and then boom, now she's at max. So now here, the enemy is already broken, I already have the enhanced basic attack. I'm actually gonna wanna ult, so that my enhanced basic attack deals 5 initial hits instead of 3, and then I have an 80% chance to deal another hit instead of a 60% chance, up to 3 times. Up to this point, my forged planner set hasn't been triggered, meaning that I don't have 40% break effect, but that's alright. Boom, 24k. I also didn't have the Harmony Trailblazers' ultimate active, so she didn't really deal any crit damage there, but that's fine. I can just test it out later since she gets her stacks fairly quickly. And then as you can see here, whenever I target the guy at the very left, even though March is imaginary, she can actually deal fire toughness reduction because Gallagher himself is fire and has been designated as the Shifu. So now I can basic attack here and reduce his toughness. That'll give me 1 stack. Basic attack here, another stack, follow-up attack, another stack. And then again, this is why I brought Firefly, so that March can shred through the fire weakness along with Gallagher as well, so that they can both trigger the Forged Planner set, so that they can both get 40% break effect. So like right there, boom, I got 40% break effect because of the planner sphere, and I was able to reduce a toughness that isn't her actual type, but rather Gallagher or her Shifu's type. Basic attack, follow-up attack, into the ultimate, another stack which went over 7, but either way it counted as a reserve. And then even though I didn't ult, meaning that this enhanced basic attack isn't gonna deal 5 rather than 3 initial hits, and it isn't gonna have an 80% but rather a 60% chance to do another hit up to 3 times. Let's still just test out the damage here. 53k, that's pretty good. So yeah, that's how you build and use March 7. Comment down below what other character you'd want me to cover, and if you liked the video, please like and subscribe.